Hey there, how's it going? Welcome back to another video, and today we're talking about recording guitars, and specifically we're talking about reamping our recorded guitar parts. As you probably know, there's a bunch of different ways to record guitars these days. Technology, computers, and everything else. We have a lot of options available to us, which is great. But if you're wanting to record your guitars with a real amp and a real cabinet, maybe your real guitar pedals, maybe a real microphone, maybe two real microphones, all that stuff, reamping your guitars and having that option available to you is a great option to have and allows a lot of flexibility, kind of solves some problems here and there, or at least makes things easier. We're going to talk about all those things, how to set it up, how to actually go about doing it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright, so as I mentioned, reamping your guitars offers a lot of flexibility and different things you can do and make some things easier and solve some problems, especially in a home recording studio. Let's talk about some of those things real quick. You may know some of these reasons for reamping and maybe some new ones that you can use later as different situations come up. Reason number one you might want to reamp is just too loud. Tube amps, you got to crank them up to get that tone and all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe you have to record at night, or maybe you live in an apartment and it's just not feasible to crank an amp at that time. Well, you can get your guitar parts recorded and get all that down, and then later, whether it's during the day, when your neighbors are gone, or you can move to another location or whatever it is, then you can actually reamp those guitar parts and you have those perfectly played parts and you have your guitar tone without really getting anybody mad at you. Reason number two is maybe you're limited on time. Maybe you have to record in the evenings and you only have like a block of like 1 hour at a time. Well, instead of taking half an hour or 45 minutes dialing in your guitar tone and then just leaving a few minutes to play those parts and rush through them, you can focus on getting your parts down really well, getting perfect takes, and then later on, when you have another block of time, a couple days later or whatever that is, then you can reamp them and you can take that time to focus on getting your perfect guitar tone. So then you have excellent guitar takes and excellent guitar amp tone, and you have the best of both worlds. Number three, using someone else's amp. So maybe there's a particular amp that you don't have but you want on your song. With reamping, you can send off your guitar tracks to somebody, maybe a friend or a studio that has that amp, and they can dial that in really well and they can send you those files back. Or you can just take your laptop to your friend's house or the studio, set everything up, dial the tones in yourself, just hit record, and then you're done. You have your parts ready to go with that amp now on your song. And number four, which is probably my favorite, is just much easier editing. So when we record the direct guitar signal for reamping, we're going to see that those transients on that signal are really clear to see, and it makes it really easy to fix any timing issues or cut and splice things in and out. Sometimes, especially with higher gain stuff, if you're recording straight off the cabinet through the microphone, you're going to see that waveform is just like a solid bar going across, and it's really hard to see those individual notes or those chord changes, and editing can be a little harder or more tedious. So with this direct guitar signal, it's super easy to edit, get everything where you want it, then you send it out to the amp with the tone that you want, and you have a nice, good, single, solid, clean take. Alright, now it's time to start setting stuff up and start making this happen. We want to get the direct signal off the guitar. That's what we're going to use to reamp later. So there are probably lots of different ways to get this direct sound recorded. There are two popular ways that I use and I've seen lots of other people use. And the first one we're going to talk about is using a DI box. And so this is my DI box I have currently. It's just a cheap passive one. I've had nicer ones and more expensive ones. There are lots of options, but this one works just fine for now. So what this allows you to do is actually use your amp when you're laying down your parts. You can hear your amp if you just want to dial it in kind of close. All right, so this is pretty simple to set up, but all you're going to do is you're going to plug your guitar into the input of the DI box, and then you're going to take 1/4 inch out of the output of the DI box, and that is going to go into your guitar pedal board or your amp or however you normally set that up, and then all that's going to work just like normal. Now on the other side of the DI box, there's an XLR output, and you're going to plug that into an XLR input on your audio interface just like you would a microphone, and then that's where the DI signal, that direct signal from the guitar, is going to come from, and that's what we're actually going to record. We're not going to record anything from the amp at this time. Option number 2 is probably the easiest to set up, and it's just to use an amp sim. And so I have several on my computer. You may have several on yours. If you don't, there are lots of free ones out there that you can get. I'll leave a link in the description down below to a couple of those. Not affiliate links or anything. It's just some that I have, and you can use. The only downside to using an amp sim in this way is just that when you're recording your guitar parts and laying them down before you reamp them, that amp sim may or may not sound close enough to your amp or the sound you're going for. That's something you're going to have to decide. I have several different amp sims, so I can usually get close enough that it's not really an issue, but that's the only kind of shortcoming you may run into. But it's super simple to set up. It's just like using an amp sim like you normally do if you already do. You take your guitar, you plug it into your audio interface, make sure it's set to instrument level on your audio interface, put the amp sim on your channel, dial it in, whatever you want to do with that, and then you're good to go. And when we turn that amp sim off, that sound that we hear is the direct guitar signal that we're looking for, that we're going to use to reamp later on. So again, super simple setup. You don't have to have a DI box, don't have to go buy one if you don't have one, all that stuff. So this is the easiest setup, and this is what we're going to be using today. All right, so with all that out of the way, I'm going to lay down some guitar parts real quick and then capture that direct signal off my guitar, and then I'm going to show you how to set up for reamping. All right, so now it is time to reamp our guitars. One thing that you probably need, I'm going to say you probably need, is a reamp box. So this is what I use. It's a reamp box. It's kind of like the reverse of the DI box that we talked about, although it works a little differently. So what it does is when your signal comes off your audio interface, you plug it into here. It's at line level, and then it does some magic on the inside, and then it knocks it down to an instrument level, which is what your guitar puts out. And what that does is that means that your amp is seeing a guitar level signal, so it's getting what it's expecting. So the question always comes up, do I need a reamp box like this, or can I just plug straight off my audio interface into my guitar amp? And the technical answer is yes and no. So yes, technically you can do that. However, that signal is going to be hotter and different than what your amp is expecting or what your amp is used to getting from your guitar. So it's going to sound a little different and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into all the technical stuff on like that. If you really want to explore that, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below to a channel called Creative Sound Lab. And Ryan, he's the one that runs that, and he's got all kinds of videos where he does all these different tests and examples of all these things, and he goes into a lot of detail on this with a lot of different options and tests he runs on it, and I think he even has like sound files you can download. That way you can decide for yourself if you need a reamp box. Also, the best way to do it is just try it yourself and decide if you need one with your setup. So again, I like to use a reamp box. Do you need one? Yes and no, but yes. So to set all this up, basically we're just going to come out the back of our interface. My interface has multiple outputs on the back, so I'm just going to come out of output number 3. If you don't have multiple outputs like that, then you can use one of the monitor outputs, one of the main monitor outputs, and just unplug a speaker and plug your cable into there. Obviously, you're going to be running on only one speaker then for listening back. Not ideal, but it works. I've had to do that before, so it's certainly an option. And then you're just going to plug into your reamp box. So whatever kind of plug on your cable you need to come out of your audio interface, and whatever kind of plug you need on the other end to go into your reamp box, that's what you're going to need. My audio interface requires a 1/4 inch balanced, and so I have that on my output number 3, and then the Reamp box takes an XLR cable, and so I'm plugging that in there. Now coming out of the output of the Reamp box, you're just going to use your guitar cable like normal, and you're just going to plug that into your pedal board or your amp like you normally would, and basically just treat your Reamp box as if it were your guitar. And so you just dial your tones in like you normally would and all that stuff, and put a microphone in front of your cabinet, plug that into your audio interface like you normally would, and you're good to go. Now let's look at the software and talk about how to set that up real quick. All right, so jumping into the software here, you can see I'm using Studio One. You can use any recording software you want to. It's going to work pretty much the same. This is not specific to Studio One in any way. So you can see that I have here 3 guitar tracks. I just call them DI1, DI2, DI3. You can certainly do something more descriptive if you want to. You can also see that I have Amplitude on here for my amp sim. I just use the Fender Collection 2, which is an extra add-on for Amplitude you can get. I didn't spend a lot of time tweaking settings or anything. I spent maybe 5 seconds dialing stuff in. Just picked a preset and went with it. And so I have 2 rhythm guitar parts, panned hard left and hard right, and 1 up the middle for the lead there, and those are my guitar parts that I'm going to reamp. If we listen to what that sounds like, if I solo one of these up and turn Amplitude off, you can hear that we have that direct guitar sound. Right? Super pretty, super amazing, all that good stuff. So that's what we have. That's what we're looking for too, though. So what I like to do first thing first is just disable Amplitude. You can just bypass it, whatever you want to do. I just disable them. That way it's gone, not using up any computer resources. And then I'm going to create 3 more audio tracks. So now you can see I have 3 guitar tracks here. It's guitar 1, guitar 2, guitar 3, and these are going to be what we're going to record the actual amped signal from through the microphone and all that stuff. So I have those here, and I just pan them the same way. And what we're going to do is we're just going to play our DI tracks out our interface one at a time, and we're just going to record those. So what we want to do is change these DI tracks to output 3, because if you remember, I have my Reamp box plugged into output number 3. I'm going to want to solo this one up, and it's probably just usually a good idea to make sure these are set to 0 so that you're getting the full signal going out, your output there. And then I'm going to make sure that what I'm recording is armed, so DI1, guitar 1, and then I'm going to play that out and record that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with number 2 and number 3. Alright, so just to save time, I went ahead and tracked guitar 1 and guitar 2, and those are all recorded. And you can, as I was showing earlier, you can see the transients here on my DI signal and the lack of transients on the actual amped guitar. So going back to the editing thing, this is easier to edit than this, generally speaking. And then we're going to track that lead guitar part. So again, I'm just going to solo this one up here. I'm going to make sure that this one is armed and ready to go. And then I just hit record. Alright, so that pretty much wraps everything up from the setup and the actual reamping and recording and all that stuff. I try to go into as much detail as I could without making this like crazy long. But if you have any questions or if I left something out, make sure you let me know in the comments down below. I'm happy to answer those questions. If you found this helpful, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe and the bell notification. And also make sure you check out the links in the description down below because we reference those free amp sims and Ryan's channel, Creative Sound Lab, if you want to check out that video as well. Also, make sure you check out my website, dadrockandguitars.com. More cool stuff over there. I probably have some videos showing here that you can check out as well. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.